are the three biggest pest management concerns food and beverage processors face during transportation? We cover that and more during this special bonus episode of the Food for Thought podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Erin Holstrom. This week, I talked to Pamela Peckman and Sharon Dobesh of Industrial Fumigant Company to gain a better understanding of the pest control issues that can arise during transportation. During the next 20 minutes, we talk about common pests found in shipping, as well as regulations surrounding sanitation and pest-free shipping. Stick around until the end, where we discuss preventative measures food facilities can take, as well as ways IFC can help food and beverage processors with their pest management programs. Enjoy the episode. I'm so excited to have a great team on today. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
There's so much I want to cover with you today. I really want to dig right in. Let's talk food safety and transportation. What are the three biggest food safety concerns food processors face during transportation?
Food processors work hard to ensure the safety of food products throughout the supply chain, but, the supply chain can involve great distances that the ingredients or finished food must travel, not to mention lots of hands-off along the way. So they actually have a lot of concerns in this arena, such as biosecurity, theft, driver and fleet safety, and then, of course, what Sharon and I know the most about, and that's pest management concerns. So I'm going to change your question to what are the three biggest pest management concerns faced during transportation, which are probably microbial concerns, physical foreign material concerns by way of arthropods, birds, rodents, and then also chemical contamination concerns. So, food safety and security during transportation is critical. And the use of a security seal helps ensure items were not messed with after the door is closed and the truck pulls away. But the only problem with those security seals is that pests don't have a clue what they are, and if door seals are not tight and the unit happens to park in an area conducive to pests, there's always that possibility of an unwanted stowaway.
What are some common pests found during inbound and outbound shipping?
Some of the most common pests that we find, and it kind of depends. Inbound is usually things like rodents, mice or rats, ants, and other things that might be in the food, say stored product pests. And outbound shipping pests are going to be very similar. As Pamela mentioned, if door seals are not sealed on the trucks during transportation, anywhere along that route, something could potentially enter that shipment, and that's when you find sometimes those unwanted hitchhikers, or sometimes, some stored product pests may have found their way into product even before shipping began. There's also other things like ants that can be in trailers if they're not cleaned out properly before a shipment is loaded. So, or they can be picked up if a trailer sits someplace for a long period of time over an ant mound or an outhill. So it really depends on where and how those shipments have been handled and what they've encountered along the way.
Is there a specific pest that is more likely to cause a problem during transportation?
I would say probably rodents are one of your biggest problems. If they get trapped in a trailer, they can do a lot of damage, both physically by gnawing and scratching and chewing at product, as well as if they urinate, causing stains and odors. A nest of mice or something can do a lot of damage to product in transportation.
Yeah, the other problem with rodents is, their fecal pellets are small and dark in color, so if they're present on a pallet that might have been stored in an exterior storage area, and then they bring those pallets in and load them, that dropping may get missed, and then now you've got the dropping being shipped with product, and somebody investigating or inspecting the area, they may find that and still think the rodent's present. So the presence of mice may be due to the fact that happened a while back and they're no longer present, but that telltale sign of a problem somewhere along the way is still there. And so now what do you do? And also, stored product insects they're pretty tiny too. So it is possible to have infestation in a storage area that then gets shipped along the way, and then as you're inspecting the material that you receive, you may find it's infested and it wasn't noticed beforehand, because you are talking about very tiny insects, and especially if they're inside material and not visible readily from outside the packaging.
Why is pest-free shipping an important aspect of an integrated pest management program?
Well, I would say one aspect that's very important of this is because you don't want to send an insect problem to another site or facility, and you want good, clean products to arrive so it's not rejected. So pest-free shipping is very important, from the point of spreading a problem. It's also then very important in terms of keeping food clean, a good product, so that it's arrived intact, unadulterated, uncontaminated, that type of thing. And it's also important, more recently we've come across the situation even with pests that are maybe not directly food pests, but they occur in an area where there's a quarantine pest or something, so that even exteriors of trucks may need to be inspected so that you're not carrying pests that are maybe even plant pests or something out to another area of the country where they do not exist and spread a quarantine problem to another area.
I'm curious, are there any regulations about sanitation for pest-free shipping?
Yeah, there are. The Sanitary Transportation of Human and Animal Foods was first published June of 2016, and that was by the Food and Drug Administration. So if you remember, the Food Safety and Modernization Act that was passed by Congress, it was actually implemented by FDA, and they generated lots of different rules. So that sanitary transportation rule was just one of them. And it actually covers a lot of folks, a lot of parties that are involved with the transportation process. And that includes the shippers, receivers, loaders, and carriers. So some of these requirements may be new to carriers who haven't been as involved in the food industry, but they do transport the food. But these requirements, they're found at 21 CFR 1.900 through 934, and they require written agreements between the parties, procedures, and training records, and those items have to be in place in the event FDA stops by for an inspection. So when you take a closer look at some of those sections under the Sanitary Transportation Rule, they actually talk about the definition for applying whether food's adulterated within the meaning of Section 402. They define pest to mean any objectionable animal or insect, including birds, rodents, flies, and larvae. Not sure why they define pests that way, but they've got those different definitions for flies and larvae too. And then they talk about vehicles and transportation equipment used in transportation operations must be so designed and of such material and workmanship as to be suitable and adequately cleanable for their intended use, and that's to prevent the food they transport, obviously, from becoming unsafe or adulterated within the meaning of 402A of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. So, and then they also have one last thing in there under pest management, and that's vehicle and transportation equipment must be stored in a manner that prevents it from harboring pest or becoming contaminated in any manner that could result in food for which it will be used from becoming unsafe during transportation. So, yeah, there are some definite transportation food safety rules.
Something we just talked about that really jumped out at me was about defining pests. Why is proper pest identification so important?
Well, in order to begin to address any pest issue, you need to know what you're looking at, and this is for a variety of reasons. First of all, to know maybe where it might have been picked up along the way. to know how and what methods might be available to control or contain it. Also, if you want to do root cause discovery, to be able to go back and do some trace back work, you need to know the biology of the pest, the types of habitats that it likes, know the life stage that you're working with, and these are all important. I like to use a couple of examples in that, like one insect that looks very alike, say red flower beetle and confused flower beetle, they're to most people very difficult to tell apart with the naked eye, unless you have a microscope or a hand lens or something and know what key characters to look for. One flies readily in the environment. The other one, it does not. Confused flower beetle does not. So if you have confused flower beetle, you've probably brought that in from someplace, where red flower beetle could maybe fly in from outside your facility and be occurring naturally in the area. Another reason to know why it's so important is you take some beetles, like dermestid beetles, and they not only feed on stored products, but they also can feed on things like dead rodent carcasses, and even if you have perfect sanitation, they can also feed on dead bodies of other insects. And so that's why deep sanitation can even be more important, is knowing that you may have multiple sources for some of these pests. So getting to root cause and being able to do trace backs and good control measures and targeting that life stage that's most easily controlled, you need to know what pest you're dealing with and then know the biology behind that pest.
And probably another reason why it's important is you need to verify you actually have a problem. I remember one time going to look at a trailer to confirm rodent activity, and only to find out that the suspected rodent droppings were actually burnt coconut material that hadn't been properly cleaned up before loading the trailer. So obviously they needed to do a better job of inspecting the trailer before loading and that type of thing. So sometimes you think you have a problem that is that's pest related, and it ends up not being. And also sometimes there are occasional invader type insects that, maybe you find moths on the surface of some shrink wrap pallets, and you're worried that you have a stored product insect there, and you find out that it was just an occasional invader type moth, and maybe they had the doors open for an extended period of time while they were loading. Moths got in and happened to die there inside the trailer.
Let's say I'm a food processor and I get a positive ID on a pest. What do I do?
Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is go back to where that positive ID pest came from. So was it a pallet? Was it a warehouse? And you need to determine the extent of the problem. Is it in one pallet? Is it in half the warehouse? Is it already been loaded out and spread? So you need to figure out the extent of the problem. And then, that's where we kind of delve into our IPM toolbox and start using the tools that we have available. So is it one where maybe we weren't monitoring for it very well, where we need to start putting out monitors, whether it be pheromones or checking ILT traps, and then also doing targeted pest control. So how do we control this pest? Is it something where we can just say a pallet is contaminated, get that out of the area and take care of it as a single item, and then know what's allowed to be used? Do we need to follow up with, say, crack and crevice treatments in the facility, or is it strictly, isolated where we can pull it out? It's no longer a problem and treat that pallet someplace else. Can a fumigation be done? Maybe an IGR fogging. So we have a lot of tools in the toolbox that we can start applying, and it depends on how isolated or how far spread the problem is as to maybe some of the tactics that need to be implemented. And it may get down to, is it related to a sanitation problem, say in a piece of equipment or in the facility, or is it an exclusion problem? Do we have to do some exclusion maintenance on the facility? So it's really kind of the next steps are trying to drill down and figure out what was the source of it, how did we get this problem, or was it one of those things that we did bring in an inbound shipment and unloaded, and now we need to gain control of it.
What are some preventative measures a facility can take with shipping?
Pretty much the same preventative measures you employ for keeping your facility pest-free will apply to shipping. So, focus on well-trained employees, great sanitation programs, and monitoring, inspection, and exclusion programs specific to your shipping and receiving site. So it's also important to have a detailed inspection checklist and procedures to follow in the event product must be put on hold and investigate closer, just like Sharon was mentioning earlier. What if? What if we do find an infestation? Who are we going to contact? Who's going to make the call back to the shipper? Or if you're the receiver site and you receive a call, what are your procedures going to be for handling an investigation?
What are some specific ways IFC can help food and beverage processors with their pest management programs?
At IFC, we offer a lot of tools and help to food processors. We start with we will do insect and pest identification, so they can either send photos or samples to us, and we help with identifications that way. Provide biology and literature. We've done training seminars. We help with companies that will want to set up, say, threshold documents. And they may need to say, okay, if our traps or our monitors reach a certain level, then we have thresholds and escalation procedures in place, and we can help define those for a site. And we also, help with trending reports and maybe reading the data that they're getting within their facilities to help ID problems. And we can also give advice on things like what exclusion measures may need to be taken and do site assessments.
And we also have very knowledgeable technicians that can assist with facility assessments, design of specific site-specific integrated pest management programs, ongoing inspection and monitoring programs, and we talked a little bit about having chemical safety concerns during shipping. They can tell you what products can legally be used to treat that trailer, and they'll take into account the target pest, what's going to be most effective on it, so you can get the most bang for your buck with one treatment. So if it's something that's readily killed with a simple crack and crevice, maybe you're dealing with ants, you don't have to be as aggressive as a fumigation that might be required for, internal stored product insect infestations. And one other thing that we're very good at doing is on-site training of employees. If you're setting up a inspection program for your trailers, we can help with training employees on what to look for, what the different insects of concern are, some of the procedures for inspecting a trailer, that type of thing.
Wonderful. Well, Sharon, Pamela, thank you so much for joining me today on this special bonus episode of the Food for Thought podcast. For everyone listening to the Food for Thought podcast today, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and just about everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Be sure to tune in next time as we talk more about the stories behind the headlines of the food and beverage industry. Take care. Have a great day.